Hi there. It's another day of potting up baby seedlings. Today's efforts are going to be with some violas and pansies, maybe some other things. I got to go look at them again and see if they really need to be potted up yet, or if maybe I just need to pay a little more attention. A lot of my seedlings are in some pretty small cells, and they've been kind of drying out rather quickly, but they don't necessarily look like they're busting out as far as their roots filling up the cell. So I want to check those again before I pot them up. But today for sure, we've got some violas and pansies. So let me show you what we're working with. So we have a tray here. This has 72 cells, and what I'm going to do, there are some cells where it looks like maybe there's some seedlings, but you can see some of these cells have had also a little bit of trouble with drying out too much or too quickly. So we have definitely some that are kind of like a bust. So, and then we have some where there's only one. I think this honestly is a weed that somehow got in here. So I'm going to get rid of that while we're working at it. A lot of these, there's just maybe one. These look to be more of the pansies. So these look like there's only maybe one per cell. Whereas down here by the violas, if I recall, those seeds maybe are a lot smaller. So what I'm going to try maybe is to see if I can take these that have like tons and tons and see if I can just chunk them into two chunks to give them a little more room to grow, and see how they do. Hopefully, and if it looks like they start to struggle, then I can always do what's called thinning, where I would come in here with a pair of scissors or snips and trim out some of the ones that are like super close so that there's maybe only 2 or 3 seedlings left, and the roots of the ones that I snip off would just kind of eventually dissolve, decompose back into the potting mix. But I definitely, you can see here, I pulled one of them out. They are lots and lots of roots all together, filling up the cell. They're ready to be moved up into some bigger accommodations. So what I'm going to do, these cells are, you can see, about this big. They're fairly deep, but they're only maybe about an inch or so, inch and a half wide at the top, maybe an inch or slightly under an inch at the bottom. They kind of taper. These cells are going to be probably two or 3 times the room. These are more like 2 inches across, maybe even a little wider than that. They're about as deep, maybe a little bit deeper, but definitely lots more room. So, and these right now are in a seed starting mix, so there's not a whole lot of nutrition in there. These will be moved up into a potting mix mixture, and this has some things already mixed in, some organic materials, but it also, I have added a little bit of a root friendly, root encouraging, very gentle organic fertilizer to this that's called Biotone Starter Plus from Espoma. I use this for almost everything at the beginning to help encourage some strong roots. So they're going to get that. Plus, over the next couple weeks, I'm going to start ramping up, giving them a little bit of organic liquid fertilizer, probably once a week or once every 2 weeks. So that should hopefully get them growing and happy and keep them happy, even though I'm getting ready to evict them from their current little tiny cells. So let me get set up and I'll show you that with a few of them, and we'll get these babies in their new spots. All right, so we have our potting mix here. I've added a little bit of that starter fertilizer and mixed it in. I added just a little bit of water. You don't want this to be drippy. You do want it to kind of hold together. And so it's kind of doing that because you do want there to be some moisture for the roots to reach towards in the potting mix, but you don't want it dripping. So I think we're in pretty good shape, considering what I'm doing is potting things up. I'm not planting seeds that are going to move around if I need to water. So I think we're okay here with what we've got. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add in some of this potting mix. I'm going to keep it rather loose because I'm planting basically what you could call plugs from a tray that has smaller cells. So we might call that a plug tray because I don't know why they call them plugs. Sorry. Maybe because I don't know, I don't know why they call them plugs. All right, so you can see here, we've got nice, healthy seedlings. The roots are nice and white, lots of them. They're, all mixed together. There's a bunch of little baby plants here. So I'm gonna just gently kind of wiggle my fingers on it to see if I can pull them apart. And I can hear some roots tearing, but we're gonna try this and see. Hopefully they'll be all right. Hopefully they've got plenty of roots. Even if a few of the seedlings die, obviously there's a lot in here, so we just need a few to live. So then I'm going to make a little hole with my finger, stick that down in there, and then kind of tuck it in, kind of tamp things down, add a little bit around, make sure all those roots are covered, and give that a nice tidy home. Tuck it in so that it's firm, but not jammed in there. So same thing here. I'm going to make a little opening, tuck that in there. And I'm making that hole pretty far down because these plugs are about as deep as the cells are pretty close to the same depth. You can see here, this is out of the plug tray. These are the new cells. It's not that far from the bottom of the plugs to the bottom of these cells, but there's a lot more room. So they should be happy in here until probably it's time to plant them out in the porch pots. These are violas and pansies, and they are flowers that are annuals, but they don't mind some chilly weather. So my hope is that I'm going to be able to put these out for some early spring color in the porch planters. So that's kind of the plan and the hope. And so that's basically the process. I've taken a plug that had a ton of seedlings in it and gently pulled it apart. I'm going to do that on a few of them, and then some of them I'm not, just because I'm not positive how well they're going to respond. So I actually have 2 sets of 6 of these King Henry violas. So half of them I'm going to split that have lots of seedlings, and the other half I'm not. And that way, if my splitting them up goes poorly, I've got some backups. So I'm going to keep doing this, and I'll show you how much we have once we get all done. However, wait, so you can see here, these are definitely ready to be transplanted. Down here at the bottom, the roots are slightly discolored, and there's some that are kind of turning brown. So these were definitely needing to be potted up maybe even a week ago. Give it a little shake as you're pulling it apart, and that can help sometimes to untangle instead of tearing the little roots. I'm going to show you, I'm going to pause here and show you where I've got one that there's just what looks like 2 seedlings in here. How I get these apart and preserve the vast majority of the roots. So you can see they've got some good healthy roots, nice and white, kind of spitting around. But I'm just going to gently kind of wiggle my fingers around the seed starting mix, and what I'm doing is I'm just kind of encouraging it to the roots to release the seed starting mix. And this is why you want to start your seeds with seed starting mix, because it's a very fine mixture. And so when you get to a stage where you need to do something like this, as long as your plants are healthy, it goes pretty well. So I'm just gently, you can see it's kind of coming apart here. We've got less and less of the starting mix on here. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take each seedling kind of down close to soil level and just gently shake and pull my fingers apart. And I might hear a root or two pop, but as long as I do this slowly and gently, what's going to happen is the roots are just going to untangle from each other. You can see they're just kind of untangling. And look, I have two seedlings with nice long root systems. So now what we do is we come over here, we make our hole in the potting mix, make it a fairly deep one, because you can see the roots are pretty long. And I'm going to just gently get that to go in that hole, kind of wiggle it around a little bit. We don't want any roots staying up on the surface. And I'm just going to keep kind of gently guiding it in. And as I get it partway in, I don't know if this part's easy enough to see, I'm going to start encouraging the potting mix to fill in any gaps. We don't want any air gaps around the roots. So I'm just gently tamping that in, and then I'm going to start adding in some additional potting mix while I hold the plant up with one hand, and then put some potting mix in around with the other until I get it all those roots tucked in, no air gaps down in there, and it is firmly in there. Again, not jamming it down. We don't want a brick of potting mix, but just stable, so that as we water, it's not going to just collapse on there. And there you go. We now have a repotted little seedling with much more room to spread its roots, spread its wings, and grow. Same process. Make a hole, make it pretty deep, guide those roots in, make sure none of them are getting caught up on the surface. As they start going down in there, in that hole, add some potting mix in to make sure there's no gaps. Just keep gently kind of tamping that in. Keep the seedling up where you know, so it's not going to be too deep down in the cell. And then hold on to it with one hand. Use your other hand to add in small bits of potting mix and kind of tamping it down around until you've got it all nestled in there, and you have potting mix all the way up where it needs to be. And there we go. Repotted, separated, more room to grow. And we've got a tray of violas already all filled with the larger cells. So this tray is now completely full. I still have 4 more rows of violas to do, and basically 3 rows of pansies. So I'm going to get this done, get these all tucked in, and then I will, just as a final step, I'm going to add a little bit of vermiculite on the top to help with moisture management and try to keep the fungus gnats at bay. I have seen a fungus gnat or two, so I will also be adding some sticky traps that kind of look like this yellow flower here. They have a very sticky substance on them. The yellow attracts the fungus gnats, and they stick to it and die, hopefully before they've laid any eggs in the potting mix. But I will also be trying to do some other things, but maybe that'll be another video, things that I'm trying to keep the fungus gnats at bay. But anyways, this is the project for today, getting all these violas potted up. Thank you for joining me here today in Aunt Susan's garden.